2007. 1998. Okay, they're telling me 1998. They're just telling me they don't even get hangovers. Fucking assholes. So anyhow, this is my beautiful t-shirt. I love it so much. Neil, Traffic Tech. You guys know Traffic Tech. They're in Canada. I have so many friends there. I love that brokerage. And hopefully they'll be in Arkansas next week. You guys, Arkansas, this is it. We're starting it. I have something special to tell you. It is the Future of Supply Chain Conference next week in Rogers, Arkansas. And you will see the entire production team. They will all be there. Everybody that I pick on a daily basis will all be there. We'll be together. I told them I was going to go out and get them really, really drunk the first night so that they'd have to suffer the rest of the week. But now I'm thinking that idea is probably not a good one. So get your tickets, go to the website, look through who the speakers are, because for those of you looking for some fresh shippers, this might be a good event for you. I saw, let's see, Nestle, Wayfair, PetSmart, Tyson Foods, a lot of good companies. A lot of my friends will be there. If you get FOMO, you're going to get it. So I saw, Lean is going to be there. We all love Lean. Come on now. Echo, P44, Amazon, Convoy, Shelly Simpson will be there with JB Hunt, Justin Hall. We all know we love Justin Hall. And then also from Kingsgate Logistics, I saw Tom Curie. I love that guy. All right, let's get to the show. While you guys all look up your FreightWaves conference and make sure you get your tickets, and make sure you get tickets for November too. That's going to be my really favorite conference. So today we are going to talk about setting speed limits on trucks. I am very passionate about this topic, but I'm also very torn inside. And I think our guests are going to help us work through this discussion, because at first, we've all been run off the road or dealt with a big ass truck going 90 miles an hour, and it's terrifying. And we know that speeding causes accidents from cars and trucks. So it feels like a no-brainer. All right, fine. Trucks can't go 90 miles an hour. Like, why should they be going to 90 miles an hour? No-brainer. Just do it. But it's more complex. The discussion is way more complex. And not surprisingly, the trucking industry is not a fan of regulation to begin with. So they're not very happy about this situation, but there are many trucking companies that already have speed limiters. I mean, look at Schneider. Schneider has had them for years and has worked out fine. But there are many who complain about those big companies with the speed limiters. I think I pulled up a quote. I went through the proposed regulation. Just so you guys know, it's the FMCSA. They first propose a regulation, which they're saying they're going to require speed limiters on trucks. They give us a 30-day comment period from the industry where everybody types out their comments. And I saw one comment that was interesting, and I pulled it up. Maybe the Boiler Room boys can help me find it, but it was a pretty good one. I labeled it FMCSA comment about speed being a hazard. Here it is. So this one's Tyler DeBar. I pulled it right off our public website if you want to go read it. But it says trucking companies and owner-operators should determine how fast they want their trucks to go, not the government. Oh, Jesus, they all say that. If the trucks can only run 60, 65 miles per hour, it'll severely limit our abilities to merge with traffic as well as avoid hazards and collisions and other vehicles. So these are a lot of good comments. Some of them are garbage as usual, but they make great points. And it comes from truck drivers who are on the road, those small companies that are going to be impacted by such a decision. So one more thing before we bring on our guests. And I want to talk about the why now, because that was my first question, because I've seen the speed limiter regulation pop up with the FMCSA a few times, never really goes anywhere. So I'm like, why now, especially with the cost of fuel and the supply chain issues? Is this really a good idea right now? So there's a why now image. And it says, thank you. You guys are on your game. This is from the FMCSA's website. Why is the FMCSA pursuing this carrier-based rulemaking now? And they talk about the National Roadway Safety Strategy has identified speed as a significant factor in fatal crashes, and speed management as a primary tool to reduce serious injuries and fatalities. The number of CMV crashes in which a speed is listed as a contributing factor is unacceptable. And they want to take this approach using speed limiters to slow down the CMVs within a relatively short period. So let's dive into this, and let's dive into it from experts, not from Cassandra's opinion, who is a former lawyer and has seen every really bad accident under the sun and everything that goes wrong. But let's talk from those who have a broader experience than I do. So we're going to bring on our guest from OOIDA, and we're going to bring on our guest from the Institute of Safer Trucking, Henry Adler and Andrew King. I'm excited to have you guys join us. And I hope that the boiler room guys, were they nice to you guys when you showed up? Or, were they really mean to you like they're always mean to me?
No,
they were nice.
Darn it. I'm always trying to pick on them, but they don't give me enough ammunition these days. They've been behaving themselves. All right, so first, Henry Adler, Institute of Safer Trucking. Tell us about Safer Trucking, and tell us what your first thoughts were when you saw this proposed regulation.
So yeah, two things. One, it's just Harry, it's not Henry, but
God damn it!
We're definitely
seriously. Sorry, man.
Yeah,
I'm an asshole. Now the boiler room guys are cracking up, and I know it right now. Okay, it's Harry, not Henry. I'm typing this out right now. Such an asshole.
So the Institute for Safer Trucking, it's a nonprofit that I co-founded. Back in March of 2020, which I always joke was a hell of a time to start something up. But yeah, our whole goal is to, try and educate the public about ways to make trucking safer. We also try and help, folks who have been in truck crashes, families that lost loved ones, connect with other people who have had a similar experience, become educators on different solutions that might prevent a crash that, was similar to the one they were in. And, when we heard that the FMCSA was going to, be doing this notice of intent, we're obviously very supportive of it. I mean, we think that speed is, a contributing factor to, large truck crashes. And it's something that's incredibly preventable, especially when you consider that most trucks since the late 90s, early 2000s have had speed limiter technology. So, we think this is one of those solutions that's right there in front of us. And, it's a cost-effective one, especially considering you don't have to put the technology in the truck. So, we're supportive of it. We're supportive of the FMCSA's approach to try and get, more data, more information, both from the industry, from safety advocates, because that's what we want. We want folks to be collaborating on solutions, and we think that there's a lot of agreement, between, different parties.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so Harry, not Henry. Thank you for that. Andrew, you've been on the show a few times, and I love having you. I know that OOIDA is not a fan of this regulation, not surprisingly, Andrew. But what were your thoughts when you first came out, and what are you hearing from those with smaller companies when they're coming to you and they're like, the FMCSA is doing what?
Right. Oh, yeah, they're pretty frustrated about it. I guess our first reaction was kind of just being a little shocked. The last time they tried to do this rule was in 2016. And so it's kind of interesting that, like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, why now, especially with the supply chain issues. And I know it's kind of a catch-all phrase to say that speed is a contributor in all crashes, but that statement doesn't mention if it's going above the speed limit or not. It could just be traveling too fast for conditions. And the other thing that is often not mentioned in things like this that's really frustrating to small truckers or truckers in general is the fact that 75% of all crashes that involve a passenger vehicle and a truck are actually caused by the passenger vehicle. So a rule like this really makes
that's incredibly frustrating.
I mean,
and I wonder, I have a car that can go to 120 miles an hour, and I'm like, why can cars go that fast? Just in general, when it's illegal across the country. And I'm like, that would be a good give and take, is if they were partnering with the National Highway Safety Administration and they did start implementing limiters on cars as well as maybe an equal in exchange. It's a great point. But what tell me this, Andrew. What's wrong with just slowing the hell down?
Well, it's not
what's really
slowing
wrong.
down. That's the issue. The issue is traveling in a uniform speed. So science and many studies of research have shown that when there is a variance in speed, there is a greater chance of interaction, and that's what increases the likelihood of a crash. So if anyone's driven on a road, it's not necessarily the fastest car that's causing the problems, it's the slowest. So if you slow down traffic, especially large trucks, you speed limit them while passenger vehicles are continue to go faster. You have a state like Texas or places out west like Utah where the speed limit on certain roads is 80 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour, and you limit a truck to 65. That's a 20-mile-an-hour speed difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
That causes all sorts of issues and struggles and interactions. And it's interesting. Eric Weiss of the NTSB just recently made this statement saying that the majority of speeding related heavy vehicle crashes involving heavy vehicles traveling at unsafe speeds for conditions, meaning in speed restricted areas, traffic congested areas, poor weather conditions, rather than crashes involving trucks and buses traveling at high rates of speed above 65 miles an hour. The issue is not trucks traveling fast. We do agree that we don't want people speeding, but what we want is uniform speed limits. That the safest condition is when you're going with the flow of traffic, and when you change that, you have a greater likelihood of crashing. Plain and simple.
Okay. What would be a proper? Because they didn't actually. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's go back. Let's go back to Harry Henry. What do you think about this? Because I see your smile.
Yeah, I think there's a couple issues with it. I mean, for one, we have posted speed limits, but, I think that assertion, sort of rests on the idea that everyone's going to be traveling at 65 miles an hour if, say, the posted speed limit's 65 miles an hour. Now, we know that's just not true, right? There's the cautious driver versus maybe the guy who's running late for work and decides to go. So, I mean, the idea that there's not already, speed differentials that exist on posted speed limits, I just think ignores, the reality of all these different humans operating cars and trucks and buses. But, another thing that I feel like isn't mentioned much is the fact that there are so many companies, some of which are publicly traded, that operate in states that have speed limits of 75, 80, 85 miles an hour. And, if they were really getting in crashes, wouldn't we be seeing, whether it's a plaintiff's attorney or maybe even a shareholder, suing them? I just think that, we have evidence of the fact that you look at the top 100 companies, for the ATA, for hire carriers, over 70% of those companies use speed limiters. I can't imagine that if it were really causing an increase in crashes, we wouldn't see some of those companies reversing that decision. And frankly, we haven't heard of a company that has. So I just don't think that when you actually look at what's already happening on the roads, you don't see that there would be some kind of reversal. Again, whether it's a shareholder who would be upset that, the company is not either being as profitable, having increased crash rates, which, aren't great for them as a shareholder. But then also, a plaintiff's attorney, right? We have not heard of a single plaintiff's attorney that has sued a trucking company for setting a speed limiter. So,
well, I will tell you that
getting into crashes.
But not for setting the speed limiter, right? So if there were really water to the argument that the speed limiters are causing the crash, wouldn't a good attorney say, "Hey, we're going to go after the company for setting the speed limiter"?
Right. Well, the point I'm making is not necessarily that the speed limiter causes the crash, but causes a greater likelihood of interaction. So when if a passenger vehicle crashes into a truck, they're not going to sue necessarily the carrier.
Yeah, that's why I also mentioned. That's why I also mentioned the shareholders, right? Like, if again your argument is that it causes a greater number of crashes, well, then as a shareholder, you'd be pretty annoyed for a publicly traded company to invest in a technology that's increasing your fleet's likelihood of crashing.
Well,
and
the greatest.
Yeah, let's slow this down for just a minute because you guys are making really good points, right? So first of all, the carriers do get sued if somebody rear ends them. And that's been a growing trend, especially in Louisiana and Texas. So carriers going too slow, it is a concern. However, when I worked at one of the major carriers that has governs on their speed and all their trucks, Harry brings up a really good point that we just didn't see a lot of anybody getting any major issues with the governors, or we would have had a lot of meetings and discussions about we need to remove them because they are causing issues and our drivers are having issues. It just hasn't been an issue that I've seen. Go ahead, Andrew. What were you going to say?
If I can, I'm sorry. A good majority of crashes occur in areas where a speed limiter would make no difference. So 75% of crashes occur on roads where the speed limit is 60, 65 or below. And a lot of that's in the 50, 55 mile an hour range. And in that area, a speed limiter has absolutely no impact. In fact, what you'd see would be the opposite, is that people trying to make up for lost time will speed in areas where they shouldn't, such as construction zones and things like that, in order to make up for lost time. And in fact, there are states who used to have a differential speed limit between cars and trucks that have reversed that because they do see an issue that this is a safety problem where there is a big difference between the car and the truck and the rate of speed that they're traveling.
I say that you make excellent points with regards to construction zones and areas where they shouldn't, they should be somewhere around 45 to 55 miles an hour. There are a lot of accidents, but I'll tell you the most destructive accidents are the ones where the truck is going over 70 miles an hour, jackknifing, ramming into traffic because it can't slow down quick enough because traffic is stopping and they were going 90 or they're going 80. Like, let me ask you this, Andrew. Should trucks at any point in time, should they be going 90 miles an hour? Is that okay?
No, I would say no, because there's no speed limit that goes that high. But another point I would make is the speed limiter doesn't affect
maybe
anything
a limiter
going
should
down.
be 80.
Yeah,
well, if the speed limit is...
If I could just quickly interject, I mean, based on the available data out there, most truck tires that are available are only rated for a maximum speed of 75 miles an hour. So, I mean, with that in mind, why would we, have trucks going speeds of 80 or 85 miles an hour, even if it is the posted speed limit? That's not great for, the life of the tire. And in fact, actually makes it more likely that you have something like a tire blowout. So, I mean, the tire manufacturers didn't arbitrarily pick that number and just post it on there because they themselves are a fan of speed limiters. They do it because that's really the top speed at which like a truck tire should be traveling. So, I mean, just looking at, again, the truck tires that are available, 75 is really the top line. I haven't seen, many truck tires, if any, that are rated to go 80 or 85 miles an hour.
So, Andrew, do you think that you could get behind, or OOIDA could get behind a speed limiter at a more reasonable speed, or something that's a compromise, like 75 instead of 65?
No, the only thing I would say that OOIDA would support is if you regulated all traffic. So it's really unfair to, again, pick on just trucks when the roads are actually built for trucks, not for passenger vehicles, for the movement of freight. We want uniform speeds. So if you're going to set trucks at 65, okay, but that means you need to limit the passenger vehicles too. Why is it okay for them to go 90, 100 miles an hour and the truck can't? If you slow down the truck,
because
say 5 miles an hour,
Andrew,
if you slow down the truck even a little bit and the passenger vehicle is still speeding, that's a huge issue. And the other thing I would...
It is easier. I know you want to compare the two, but it's the trucks are fucking huge, Andrew. Like compared to a car can hit the brake, won't cause as much of a destruction. The trucks... I will tell you that it's true. But
the carriers that you've mentioned that already limit their trucks also have some of the worst safety records compared to other carriers. We have done research in the foundation comparing large carriers that use speed limiters versus large carriers of similar size that don't. And they have a better safety record than those who have speed limiters. You talk about shareholders. One of the biggest things is cost of operations. The number one expense besides a driver is the fuel. Large carriers use speed limiters not for safety. They use it for fuel consumption.
Or fuel.
They're trying to save.
Let's talk about that, because I did hear, I saw somebody, actually, I think it was Andrew Teal. There's an image about fuel. I saw him say something, if the boiler room guys are still sober. And he did talk about maybe this is a good time to have these limiters because $6 diesel should be getting drivers to slow down anyhow, and the savings would be huge. Andrew does make a great point that a lot of these big carriers like the limiters because of the savings in gas. Andrew, have you heard from your members any support with regards to, hey, this would save our community a lot of cost and fuel, or are they just like, fuck the government, I hate them, we hate regulation?
Well, definitely they don't like regulation, but also you have to understand that an owner operator who owns their own truck, their own business, this is their livelihood. They understand what they need to do in order to survive, and their fuel expense is always going to be the first thing on their mind. They're going to drive in a way that helps them to get their freight delivered on time, but also in a safe manner and also in a way that can save them fuel. If they get into a crash, they're done and they might lose everything. Safety is number one on an owner-operator. In fact, our members who have over 20 years of experience, they have very few crashes. They're very experienced drivers. They know what they need to do. And so when you have a regulation like this, and not only that, okay, maybe a truck saves a little gas, but you have deceleration and acceleration by other traffic because of the congestion that they cause. I mean, anyone's ever been on a road and seen a rolling blockade where one truck is limited at 65 and the other one's limited at 63, and the frustration that causes, the slowdown that it causes, as bad of a problem that is now, this is going to exacerbate that issue. It will make those things worse.
I think that a lot of us will forego the frustration for not having a truck go 80, 90 miles an hour and hit 20 cars, causing a huge pile up and a lot of deaths and a lot of incidents. And I'll tell you this one more thing, Andrew, is that your members may be like the safe members, but we're talking about the bottom feeders here, Andrew. Like, I don't think that for your members, this is really that big of a deal. Probably. They probably just don't want regulation. But we're talking about those horrible people who go way too fast, probably shouldn't have been in a truck to begin with. And you can say the same thing for cars. I will tell you that I do agree with you that there needs to be a compromise with regards to cars, with regards to uniform speed limits. Like, this can't just be one angle that we go at with trucking. Yeah. I think it needs to be broader for sure. I'm sorry, what were we going to say? Harry Henry?
Yeah, I wanted to just jump in. I mean, for one, obviously, cars shouldn't be speeding, right? And frankly, if we're a nonprofit, and if we had more resources, we'd love to, get at expanding to car safety. But, we're obviously focused on trucks. But I think Andrew made a good point where he had noted these bigger companies are using speed limiters, in part because it produces fuel savings. So, right, we have an acknowledgement there that, again, going back to the idea of the shareholder, if it were really driving up costs or it really wasn't beneficial, they wouldn't be investing in the technology. So you have this technology that we know produces fuel savings. And, for a small business, thinking about bottom line versus top line. So the notion that, if you go a little faster, you might get a few more miles. But, the reality is those miles that you're traveling are less fuel efficient. And that's why our organization supports efforts along with OOIDA, like, safe and available parking, reducing detention time, getting rid of the overtime exemption for truck drivers. I mean, these are the areas where we're really going to start seeing, savings and getting rid of some of the economic dangers that, face so many truck drivers. But
for sure. So I'm gonna cut you off, Henry, because we gotta wrap this up because we got 1 minute left. Yeah. I will tell, since Andrew took the heat of everything, Andrew, what give us your last and final thoughts. We have about 30 seconds.
Sure. Well, I appreciate what Harry just said. I do agree with that. But one thing in particular too, when it comes to lowering or putting speed limiters, even FMCSA acknowledged in their previous rulemaking that it would increase crashes. That in itself is a problem. It decreases the severity of crashes, but we want to decrease crashes overall. And when you slow trucks down, and you have to have more trucks on the road to move the same amount of freight, you increase the risk of exposure. Trucks are on the road longer, they're driving longer, you increase fatigue. There is more to safety than just how fast a vehicle is going. there's a big picture,
Yeah,
and you can't
agree.
make things worse overall just trying to focus on this little slice of something.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that just real quick, there were a couple images about cars should be limited to. If we have enough time, we might not. But there were a lot of people that talked about the danger of cars. I see somebody on YouTube talking about automobiles going around semi-trucks too often. Look, Tony.
I'm very pleased that I could help you with your haul this afternoon. If there's anything else I could help you with, just go ahead and reach out, okay? Have a good day. Oh, it's lunchtime, yeah!
When the things you need to complete a task